Hello everyone, welcome to Vision China. I'm Chen Xue of 21st Century with China Daily, and I'm your host today. Ever since Vision China was launched in 2018, we've invited academics, business people, economists, journalists, politicians, and experts from other fields to discuss China's place in the world and the rapidly changing face of international relations. We've considered a huge range of insightful ideas that have provoked robust debate on how the world works, what role China is playing, and what role it should be playing. Ultimately, our aim is for the world and China to better understand one another. We'll be doing that once again today, but with two big differences. Today's speakers do not come here with the gold-plated credentials that earlier speakers brought to these proceedings. Instead, what they bring is the fresh outlook of youth. For all are young, the youngest being just 10 years old and the oldest 23. The other big difference between this edition of Vision China and most earlier editions is that we and our speakers are not meeting under one roof. Instead, our speakers are addressing us from 4 countries, thanks to the miracle of teleconferencing. You will have guessed that this is largely because of what we call social distancing, something imposed on us by present circumstances. That's entirely appropriate too, because it is of COVID-19 and the effect that it's had on our lives that all of our invitees will talk today. Like many of their peers in China and elsewhere, these speakers have been highly motivated and engaged in fighting this pandemic. In the past few months, we've seen overseas Chinese students collecting and sending medical supplies to Wuhan to help relieve shortages there. We've seen young doctors and nurses who have just stepped out of medical school to fight on the front lines. And we've seen millions of other young people strictly following quarantine measures by staying at home and continuing their education online. Each of these speakers has his or her own story to tell about COVID-19. And that's why we're giving them the platform of Vision China so that their voices can be heard. That leads us to today's topic, which is Young Voices, Shared Future, and Better Tomorrow. We've brought together 6 student speakers to tell us their stories. They are Wang Ziyi of Shanghai Star River Bilingual School, Max Horn of Harvard College in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Elisa Topchi, a student at St. Petersburg State University in Russia, Zhu Jiayi of the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, Xuefei Yang, who is studying at the London School of Economics, and Xiong Ziqing of Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey in California. Welcome to you all. Hi, Xiaohong. How are things going in New York?
Hello from New York. It's great to be with you all today. I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of my thoughts and experiences of being in the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak here in the United States, and also some of what it was like to be in the outbreak during my time at college. 非常荣幸能够来到今天新时代大讲堂的舞台，非常期待和你们分享一下我在疫情的情况下的一些感受还有想法。
Well, I do hope things get better there, and please take good care of yourself, okay? Hi, Ziyi. I know many of those who close to you have been doing volunteer jobs. To me, they're real heroes. You're the youngest speaker here today. How does it make you feel?
In a time of crisis, my family was doing whatever they could to help out. They were practicing social distancing, and they showed the highest degree of self-discipline and self-sacrifice. Together, they showed the spirit of solidarity. As the youngest speaker here, I also want to do my part. I cannot become a direct volunteer, but I want to use my speech to tell everybody that even ordinary people can make extraordinary differences.
Thank you, Ziyi. Hi, Jiayi. I understand you've just come home from California. You must be relieved, huh?
For sure. I feel more relieved in the sense that I'm closer to my family, and my parents finally don't need to worry about me anymore, and no more panic attacks for them after reading news about added COVID-19 positive cases every day. So yeah, it's definitely a big relief for them and for me to be just closer to the group of people that I love and care so much. But mostly I would say I'm just super happy to be finally back after a long time abroad. And I definitely miss all the Chinese food that I love, and milk tea, boba, all of that. So I'm just really happy to be back, and I can't wait to have them finally after my quarantine session is over.
Thank you for that. Now, without further ado, let's welcome our first speaker, Wang Ziyi.
My father was born in the city of Wuhan, and some of my relatives live there as well. Some also live overseas. Luckily, we can still connect with each other through a shared WeChat group called Happy Family, where we catch up, post funny videos, and gossip occasionally. But 2020 turned out to be a year unlike any other. In mid-January, we were all excited about the Chinese New Year, which is about to fall about 10 days later. Some are planning to travel to warm Hainan, some are going to make special big Spring Festival purchases, and others are going to visit their distant relatives. None of us fully realized what lay in wait. Then, on January the 23rd, news of a mysterious illness broke out, a virus we now call COVID-19. This virus is highly infectious, making people extremely sick and sometimes even killing them. At that moment, it was as if though Wuhan pushed a giant stop button and everything was put into lockdown. Naturally, in the Happy Family WeChat group, messages of anxiety and panic quickly popped up. Do you have enough face masks? Are we getting half enough medical test kits? Oh my god, I heard my neighbor just got the virus. Spring Festival is supposed to be a time to sending out red envelopes, but we began to send worry envelopes every day. Our WeChat group was bombarded with climbing figures of confirmed coronavirus cases and even deaths. Reports on social media were not helping any matters. Chaos is only causing more confusion. Then a message from our team popped up, telling us her neighbor had just died of the virus. He was only 48 years old and had been quite healthy. How can someone like that just die? We were agitated and frightened. Then there was dead silence. Nobody would say anything. Wuhan became a ghost town, and Happy Family became a ghost group. A few days later, a piece of news regarding my Auntie Peng broke the general silence of the group. She is a service worker and had been serving the community with sanitation inspections since the dawn of the outbreak. She put on a protective suit, wore her face mask, and patrolled communities to keep track of residents' health and to inform local citizens to quarantine themselves. She went out early and came back late. She did not even have time to look after her 2-year-old child. She stated in her WeChat moments, "I wish I can be Dora Imon, so I can have my own pharmacy to care for the sick and a supermarket to gather supplies. Honestly, she was our entire inspiration, of course. But her husband, Uncle Hao, was extremely worried about her safety. And yet, 3 days later, he was actually inspired to become her helping hand. Officially, he became the first volunteer of our family. He sent the sick to hospitals, gave people food and water, and helped out in many other ways. Not long after that, Auntie Ying's father also joined in. He went from house to house, helping check citizens' temperatures to make sure infected people can get cured in time. My family did not just stop there. Many relatives were very eager to help out and relieve the burden. Uncle Dong is the head chef from the family-owned restaurant. He noticed that doctors and nurses from the front lines were extremely anxious to get food. Henceforth, he signed up for a voluntary program where he would make meals for medical staff members. He made scrambled egg with tomato, wuchan fish, and other steamed dishes which would be packaged and sent to hospitals nearby. This is meant as an appreciation and a boost of morale for medical workers on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. Uncle Dong said, "They're risking their own lives to save ours. I can never express my gratitude. I don't have much to offer, but this is the least I can do. I hope they enjoy the authentic local cuisine." Soon, 2 new emergency hospitals and numerous quarantine centers were built in the city of Wuhan. Thanks to the relentless efforts of medical workers and volunteers, patients were given the care that nursed many of them back to health and saved countless lives. The situation started to turn around and we began to see a light at the end of the tunnel. But it was really 1 month later when our Happy Family WeChat group started to sense any real relief. Some relatives resumed their daily activities and posted pictures of hot dry noodles they made at home. Others made talks about how ordinary people can battle against coronavirus, and some posted their public square dance videos. Not so much. Technically, it was the living room square dance. Up till now, my family has had 7 volunteers, and my family is only one of hundreds of thousands of families in Wuhan doing their own bits to pull the city together. If you think about it, my family has been in lockdown for 76 days. That's more than 1,800 hours of torturous isolation. Hundreds of thousands of millions of people in China had to cope with the severe measures taken to tame this virus. But it is our fellow citizens in Wuhan that sacrifice the most to save us from the worst. When we look at these stats, they're not just dead figures. They signify our feelings, ups and downs. They represent countless families torn apart and heartbroken stories. But they also symbolize the strength of unity. Without Wuhan's sacrifice from joint efforts from people from all walks of life, we wouldn't have what we achieved so far. Now, coronavirus has developed from an epidemic to a full-scale global major pandemic, and it is still far from being beaten. And we begin to think about those in other countries in their struggle. Even in China, coronavirus still remains undefeated, but I'm sure the end is approaching. By then, I hope everybody will be able to come to Wuhan to enjoy delicious hot dry noodles, climb the famed Yellow Crane Tower, and post funny selfies with your family. I firmly believe Wuhan will come out of its shock and everything will be back to normal.
Thank you, Ziyi, for telling us your story. And I think millions of Chinese families will be able to identify with everything you've just said. For many of us, it seemed like the longest spring festival we've ever had, a time when we swapped stories through WeChat, shared our concerns with each other and about each other, and inspired each other too. Our next speaker's story also begins with her family. Let's welcome Elisa Topchi.
Whether we open the newsfeed in the morning or turn on the TV at dinner time, the main thing we read or hear about is COVID-19. It's penetrated the lives of everyone, everywhere in the world. And it truly scares people, because uncertainty is frightening and leads to panic, which we should never succumb to. Yes, now it seems like you're in the middle of the ocean and don't know which way to swim. And the whole globe is seen to have plunged into a bottomless ocean, an ocean of uncertainty and fear. The virus has swallowed up all of Europe, and now it has reached Russia. When it all began, I thought it was so far away that it would not affect me. We think that death is something unrealistic, that will never touch us, until our loved ones died, and we began to perceive everything differently. It's the same with the coronavirus. I'm 22 years old, and I suppose I shouldn't worry too much about being infected. But I do worry, because my grandmother is 82. She survived the siege of Leningrad in the Second World War, and she does not deserve new shocks. But the virus has reached St. Petersburg, where I'm not familiar. And I'm scared. I'm scared to lose my loved ones, because it is real now. So my whole family has moved to the countryside, away from everything. If you do not turn on the TV or do not read the news on the internet, you might even think that you were on vacation. But if you did that, you would be fooling yourself. Because no matter whether it's night or day, our enemy is awake doing its dirty work. In addition, I can't help worrying about my friends who live all around the globe. And the fact that Russia is helping other countries warms me inside. Our two countries have been friends for a long time. And at the beginning of February, Russia was one of the first to send medical help to China. This friendship is precious. And when your friend is in deep trouble, you have no choice but to help. Now that things have got better in China, it has been donating material to my country. Facing this unprecedented challenge, Russia and China have shown a sense of responsibility for the international community too. Despite the political differences, Russia has lent a hand to the United States because we know there's a lack of medical equipment there. I believe that the virus is above politics. Just think about it. We're talking about saving human lives, and everyone should have the chance to live. Only by working together we will be able to find a solution and destroy the virus. We must look into the eyes of our fear and show that we are not afraid, that we are ready to fight. If we succumb to panic, then we have already lost. You know, man is not made for defeat, but is made to fight to fight for happiness and peace, overcoming the obstacles every day. Over hundreds and even thousands of years, humanity has faced a lot of terrible disasters. Nature never tires of testing our strength, destroying cities with earthquakes and tsunamis. And people have even killed each other by the millions. But every time, those attempts to wipe us out fail, and humanity prevails. So it will be now. In this hard time, I'd like to express my gratitude to all the medical workers who endanger their own lives to save the others. I'm so proud of the young people who have become volunteers to help beyond. These volunteers bring them medicine and food, care for them, and do everything they might need. Once again, thank you. I also admire the hard work of the Chinese people, their dedication and courage in the fighting against the virus. The officials of World Health Organization have praised doctors and nurses as well as ordinary people for what they have done and are still doing. In the past few weeks, China has donated material and testing kits to Cambodia, sent planeloads of ventilators, masks and medical personnel to Italy, France, Spain, Pakistan and other countries. By April 10th, China had provided assistance to more than 120 countries and 4 organizations amid the COVID-19 outbreak. I was so happy to hear from my friend who lives in Beijing that things have got better in China. That means that the time when the virus becomes history is around the corner. Look, I can see it. Citizens of the People's Republic of China, I salute you. You are true heroes. Thank you. In conclusion, I'd like to remind everyone, everywhere, not to be afraid. Take care of your loved ones, follow the instructions for preventing the infection, lead a healthy lifestyle, and monitor cleanliness at home and all around you. And remember, thoughts have power, so think positively. Once again, think positively, because even at the end of the darkest night comes the dawn, and our dawn is near. Please be safe. All the love from Russia. Bye.
Thank you, Elisa. Despite the things that distinguish us from each other, we're all connected by a common humanity. Something I'm sure our next speaker can very much identify with. Max Horn, who also has a Chinese name, Hong Mingwei, has studied Chinese language since he was in middle school. And now, his Chinese is so good, he can almost pass as a native Chinese speaker. That's probably why he understands US-China relations better than most. Let's hear his story.
Hello to you all from the great state of New York. 大家好. My name is Max Horn, or in Chinese, Hong Mingwei, and I am delighted to share with you some of my thoughts and experiences from the epicenter of the United States coronavirus outbreak. While the efforts of frontline medical workers are showing results, better days for New York remain far off. Seeing Wuhan's lockdown conclude and daily life return to an almost normal rhythm, we New Yorkers are given hope. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and while it may be hard to see here, the restoration of vibrancy and vitality in China give us optimism. A little more about myself. I'm a first-year student at Harvard College studying East Asian languages and civilizations. Since beginning my study of Chinese in middle school, I have made numerous trips to China, forming close relationships and gaining a more nuanced understanding of the complexities of modern China. To me, the study of a new language is the study of greater empathy and compassion, and I feel that engagement with China has offered me just that. When Wuhan was first to be hit hard by the outbreak, it felt quite distant. As the virus quickly spread, though, I felt a responsibility to a place so special to me. I filmed a few 加油武汉, 加油中国 videos to show my support for those fighting on the front lines against the virus. As Americans, we have a moral obligation to multilateralism, and an ever stronger obligation to show the world just how committed we are to that sort of engagement. This is the best of America. We are good because we have empathy. Filming short, light-hearted videos dwarfs in comparison to the work of medical professionals, but I wanted to show, at a time of growing tension in US-China relations, that countless members of the American public wish to deepen engagement with China through people-to-people exchange and an eye to globalism. We, the Mandarin students, the undergraduates, the travelers, and so many more, yearn for a model of the US as an open country, not a nation of isolationist voices. Through the videos, I hope to show a down-to-earth picture of Harvard and the keen interest in China that many in the American academic world continue to have. The Harvard Association of US-China Relations, or OSCAR, of which I am a member, has also begun to create 加油武汉 videos and think about how we can continue our programming in the face of the virus's spread. Illness does not respect borders. In late January, when students and professors converged at Harvard for the second semester, the virus felt distant and opaque. We were vaguely aware of the grave situation in China, but had yet to confront the possibility of widespread infection here in the United States. It was the quiet before the storm, and then everything changed. In early March, Harvard prohibited all international travel and limited domestic travel. Then, on March 10th, Harvard entered a new phase. All classes were moved online, and students were given just 5 days to vacate dormitories and depart their campus for the year. A surreal atmosphere engulfed the campus, and we spent as much time with friends as possible. Standing in front of a long period of isolation, these few days were true togetherness. In just 3 days, the first Harvard students tested positive for coronavirus. On March 24th, Harvard University President Larry Bacow tested positive for coronavirus. Luckily, he has since recovered along with his wife. Harvard also took care to emphasize the need to treat all students, including those of Chinese descent, with the utmost respect during this time. Here are some thoughts that I wrote down after leaving Harvard and beginning online classes. In my experience, Harvard's administration acted with the utmost care, diligence, and compassion, working to make the best decision for the community based on expert predictions and the best available information. I am grateful to my professors, classmates, and administrators for working tirelessly to make the transition to online learning smooth. We may not have a campus, but we have each other. Individuals of the highest moral character and intellectual capabilities have always been the most important part of the Harvard community, and that remains even in the absence of a physical campus. Based on my observation, the challenge that we now face is not how to continue high-quality education, but how to encourage students and professors to form the interpersonal bonds that make education meaningful. I am confident that the Harvard community will rise to the occasion and look forward to continuing to form meaningful interpersonal relationships with my professors this semester. Most of all, I am grateful to those fighting on the front lines that allow us to study without hindrance in the safety of our own homes. And I sincerely hope that all members of the Harvard community, including our President Bacow, who have become infected, will quickly recover, as he has. It wasn't only the Harvard administration who would have to cope with these new realities. The Harvard China Forum, of which I am a member, promotes constructive dialogue between the two countries, China and the US, at Harvard. Despite our in-person 2020 conference being canceled, the forum hopes to facilitate online dialogue during this unprecedented time to strengthen the US-China relationship. We are currently exploring creative ways to bring together experts on the medical, financial, and social impacts of the epidemic. These are unprecedented times, and innovative, unorthodox channels for promoting much-needed cross-cultural exchange are ever more important. We are apart physically, but together in spirit. A Harvard student who I've come to admire greatly has also started an online platform that I learned about in the news, where friends and classmates can donate money to buy meals for healthcare workers fighting on the front lines in the city of New York. This classmate's father owns a number of restaurants in New York City, and they use donations to cook food for healthcare workers and deliver meals daily to hospitals throughout the city. If logistically possible, I hope to create my own version of this project here on Long Island, and plan to begin work on that very soon. 在加油武汉的视频里，我说，中国是我的第二个家了，这是我最简单、最真诚、最重要对疫情情况的想法。China is my second home. To illustrate this point, I would like to tell a short story. In the summer of 2016, I joined a trip through Where There Be Dragons to Tibetan areas of Sichuan, Qinghai, and the Tibet Autonomous Region. As part of the trip, we did a homestay with Tibetan nomads in their tents, herding yaks and drinking butter tea. The tent had only one mattress, which the family generously offered to me. When they saw I was unused to eating sitting on the floor, they drove hours to a nearby village and brought a small table and stool back for me. As we drove down the bumpy dirt road in the middle of the vast grassland, the tents in the far east, and a Tibetan monastery to the far west, my homestay father turned to me and said, 我们嘛，一家人, or we are all part of one global family. Acting as one family takes many forms. The need for close communication, collaboration, and coordination between the world's nations is more important than ever. Continued creation of open, accessible information regarding the epidemic worldwide is paramount, as is keeping the public well informed. My city is sick, but my love for it is unchanged. My second home was sick, but my affinity for it remained. Through a high school exchange program to Suzhou, I developed a wonderful relationship with my homestay sister and remain in close contact with her today. Having been through weeks of quarantine and emerged even stronger, she has become a source of great support to me during this challenging time, not to mention a great partner with which I can practice my Chinese. As I was finishing up this speech, I received a WeChat from her that read, I am a good cook now. Next time you come to Suzhou, I'll cook you something delicious. I want nothing more than this, safety, health, and a return to normalcy. During the My China album story sharing event, Chinese ambassador to the United States, Cui Tiankai, suggested I visit Linzhi in Tibet to view the blossoming spring flowers. Cheers to you all, and to a spring in Linzhi and everywhere, blossoming with life and love. This is tough, but China is emerging from this crisis, and soon we will too. 中国加油，美国加油，世界加油！当我们站在一起的时候，当我们团结一心的时候，没有任何力量能够打倒我们，因为我们每一个人都有着充满爱的一颗心，我们一定打赢这场战役。疫情结束了，中国见，谢谢。
Thank you, Max. I hope that when the current travel restrictions have been lifted, we will all have the chance to visit Linzhi. Our next speaker is Xuefei Yang. She studies in London and is still there. Britain is one of the countries worst hit by COVID-19. But the virus is not the only viral force Fei Yang has had to battle in recent weeks. Let's hear her story.
I've received a lot of phone calls and messages from my families and friends lately, concerned about how I am and asking if I'm planning to return to China soon. I'm doing a master's degree in media and communications at the London School of Economics, and I'm determined to stay here until summer. That may seem like a silly decision for most of people, but I have work to finish here and other obligations to fulfill. Nearly 100,000 people have been confirmed to have COVID-19 in Britain. The British government's response has included a nationwide order for people to stay at home, for universities to shut down, flights to be cancelled, and bans on travel. In the UK, the real fight against the virus seems to have begun only about 5 or 6 weeks ago, but I've been engaging it for more than 10 weeks. In early February, I joined a WeChat group in which LSE students from Shanxi province could offer help to families and friends back home. We overcame a lot of difficulties to raise money, buy things, and then pack them and have them delivered. And we were very pleased to be able to send more than 10,000 masks to hospitals in Xi'an, Shanxi's capital. In the meantime, friends of mine elsewhere were doing their best to help out their hometowns. And I've never felt such a strong sense of patriotism and solidarity before. But at the same time, I've never felt so powerless to help. Here I was thousands of kilometers away from home and helpless as my friends and our family suffered from this disaster. All I could do was to pray every night for the spring and happier times to come as soon as possible. I also felt powerless in another battle against racism. Since the COVID-19 outbreak, people of Asian backgrounds all over the UK have been vilified, being abused both verbally and physically. For example, a postgraduate Chinese student in the northern city of Sheffield was harassed in the street, apparently for only wearing a face mask. The Manchester Chinese Centre has received scores of complaints for racist incidents targeting children in schools. We generally think of universities as places free of racial intolerance, but a friend of mine was abused by a student on LSE campus, telling her to go back home and stay in China. Some friends and I decided not to take this abuse lying down, so we established a Facebook group and an Instagram account named Chinese Against the Racist Virus. We held a workshop to talk about issues of race and to think up protest slogans, make posters, banners, stickers, and so on. And for 2 weeks, we mobilized online and offline to promote our cause. And to my surprise, our group of 10 members soon had more than 130 members. People from all over the world living in London came to help us. At the protest rally in Trafalgar Square in central London that we organized, attracted dozens of people sympathetic to our cause, including local activist groups. We wore masks bearing the words "Racism is a virus," chanted anti-racism slogans, waved banners, and made speeches. We even attracted big media outlets like The Guardian and Bloomberg. One thing that made a big mark on me at the rally was the speech later in the day by a local resident. He said, "In this country, racism against Chinese and the East Asian people needs to be stopped. I appeal to your common humanity, your sense of compassion and fair play. All of us need to fight for it and make sure children especially are not subject to racism." After the protest was over, a Korean friend told me how much the protest meant to her and how important it was in sending a signal to the world. She told me that it would raise people's awareness and make the world a better place. A few weeks after the protest, the UK government announced its stay-at-home policy, which suddenly made it more difficult for me to study with my friends, including working on our film project. We had been shooting documentaries about how tough it could be for Chinese studying abroad to fight against COVID-19 and racism. The virus can stop us from going out, but nothing can stop us from raising people's awareness of racial equality. I and several other students from universities around the UK are now working on a written list project named Racism and Disease, which aims to gather and collate journalistic and academic articles related to the topic and read English and Chinese abstracts for them. Once the project is done, the results will be published on every social media account of Chinese Against the Racist Virus to expand its visibility. I think we have every reason to hope that the world will become a safer place in which people are treated equally as humans and not a virus. And another thing that makes me very optimistic is to see how the coronavirus pandemic is forcing the government to rethink their priorities and realize that economies are there to work for people and not the other way around. In the UK, new hospitals are being created to care for the sick. Heartless immigration laws are being relaxed, and posh hotels are being commandeered to house the homeless. I've never felt a stronger bond with the world or a greater appreciation of the work that nurses, food workers, doctors, cleaners, rubbish collectors, and so on perform for all of us. We often take their work for granted, and now they should be given the dignity and wages they deserve. British National Health Service has been facing shortages of clothing and equipment to keep its staff safe, and I've donated money to a fund to support its staff and other essential workers. I've also signed up to be a volunteer to help 1.5 million people in the UK who have been asked to shield themselves from coronavirus because of the underlying health conditions. Many Chinese students in London and elsewhere in the UK decided it was the best choice for them to return home, and that is a decision I respect. I also really appreciate that my parents and friends respect my decision to stay here and trust my ability to protect myself. I and tens of thousands of overseas students are doing that with the help of Chinese embassies and consulates around the world that are distributing packs to Chinese students studying abroad. These packs contain masks, Chinese medicine, disinfectant, and even a quote from an ancient Chinese poem about being far away from home and love from the motherland. It may take some time to conquer the COVID-19 pandemic, but whenever that day comes, I do hope that one lesson many people can learn from it is that regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, religion, nationality, or any other social or personal characteristics, we all have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Fei Yang. It's often said that when you're in trouble, home is the best place to be. So it's easy to understand the dilemma that many Chinese students overseas have faced in recent weeks. Our next speaker, Zhu Jiayi, who has been studying in California, chose to come home. But it wasn't an easy decision to make. Let's hear her story.
Mom, I heard about the news in China. Could you and Dad please stay at home? I know how visiting relatives is important to you, but these are difficult times. This is what I said to my mom right before the Chinese New Year, following the news of the virus outbreak in China. I was in LA studying there for half a year, and I felt there were only two things I could do. Call my friends and family and tell them to stay home and stay safe, and donate to the groups that could send resources back to China. However, just a few weeks after that call, things completely flipped out, and my mom had a similar conversation with me. Yet there's how I responded. I know how important it is for me to self-quarantine and not to go out, but it wouldn't have worked if I was the only one who's taking it seriously. I'm living with two other girls, and my American roomie is literally going to Chicago for her spring break just because the flight tickets were so cheap. I'm not gonna sacrifice my own life and my workout routine just if people around me don't care. Clearly, there were double standards that I had relating to my parents and myself. But that's how I realized how big of a sacrifice everybody back home in China had been making. But also I was on to something as well. In the face of a dangerously infectious disease like coronavirus, it takes joint effort from the society as a whole to effectively fight back, and it wouldn't have worked if you were alone in this. Which is how we felt as international students abroad, especially those of us who are from China. We felt helpless because although we know how dangerous the virus could get and in what way we could effectively contain its spread, it's more desperate for us to watch how people around us were treating it differently. Now obviously, the dude on the Miami beach who yelled, "If I get corona, I get corona. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna let it stop me from partying," was an extreme example. Otherwise, it wouldn't have become viral. But he did speak the minds of quite a few young Americans who still continue to romanticize freedom and risk-taking under the current emergency. The feeling of helplessness run deep for us Chinese students studying abroad who are witnessing how things are treated differently. More than that, the danger of xenophobia and the undercurrent of racism during the novel coronavirus outbreak that we Chinese students and Asian Americans faced has been extremely disconcerting. But the sense of otherness and exclusion that we struggle against do not come from just one side. Although the health and safety of us Chinese students studying abroad have been on the radar of our family, friends, and many other compatriots in China, some voiced their opposition to having us return home under the trying situation. However, it's hard even for me myself to simply judge and accuse them of being selfish, because in the face of something deadly infectious, that same desire for security that pushes me back is the very force that keeps them want to pull us out. We humanity all naturally gravitate towards the sense of belonging and security. But how far does that go? And where the fine line lies between self-protection and sense of community depends on us, individual. Now, after I returned home and during my 14-day quarantine in the hotel, I watched the film Train to Busan. Many times, the characters in the film faced the choice of whether or not to keep the door open for those who might outrun the zombies and survive. On one side, there's a group of people who are relatively safe, while on the other, someone's trying so hard to escape the zombies and make it back to the group. Do you shut the door? Different characters responded differently. The major character, Silk Wu, did close the door the first time he faced that dilemma, but only after obvious hesitation. Some may argue that he was also trying to save the group behind him by locking potential danger out. But then he gently lets go of the door. And later he answered that same question, do you shut the door? Over and over again by constantly choosing to save more people, even at the risk to his own life. Now, I'm not asking anyone to sacrifice their life for other people, nor am I suggesting that COVID-19 is as catastrophic or deadly as the zombie infection. But what I did learn from that film was that true humanity is something that we keep revisiting, challenging, and fighting to come back to. No one's born a hero. And in fact, oftentimes, heroes are pushed over the threshold. Therefore, I'm reminded that those doctors, nurses, social workers, custom officials, they have been making those difficult decisions in the fight against COVID-19 and risking their lives to do things that are greater than themselves. Now, as I and other Chinese students return home, we went out of our way to dress safely, minimizing risky skin exposure during probably the most suffocating and uncomfortable flight in our whole lives. Many peers helped me with my luggage when I needed it. The customs officials were very welcoming, although they risked exposing themselves to the potential infection. And the social workers who have been looking after us in this hotel that I'm standing at right now have been so caring and working so hard. Now, I remember one morning our psychiatrist texted to the group a little game for mental wellness training. And she advised that one of those social workers should initiate to participate first. 20 minutes into the waiting, no one responded. After a while, she texted the group again and explained that she just learned those social workers have been taking shifts, while half of them are trying to catch up on sleep of long hours of working, and the rest were on guard to make sure that they can attend to us on demand. From delivering bottled water, refilling sanitizing liquids, to taking out trash, delivering our packages, and sending us food, and many more. Exhausted, literally. One of the social workers posted on his WeChat. Another social worker, Chuan, told me that he hadn't been home ever since the 5th day after the Chinese New Year, although he's a local. Thousands of those people around the country have been serving and looking after others at their personal sacrifice. Growing up, I've heard enough that hard times bond people together. But now I know, not necessarily, nor naturally. It's a conscious choice to make. China has decided to stick with other countries by donating or distributing medical resources. Now, some may see it as selflessness, but it's a sense of enlightened self-interest as well. Because for better or worse, we're living in an age of globalization. And this pandemic starkly demonstrates that. But if nobody takes on the mantle of global leadership, the world in the future would be extremely bleak. 2020 is certainly a year to remember. But it's not certain yet what to remember it for. Is it a year that draws all of us together and train us better at global cooperation and synergies? Or is it a year that sets all of us apart? I don't have an answer, but I know every one of us is writing this chapter right now as we choose to share sympathy or hatred, understanding or bigotry, bonding or exclusion. I know which path I'm taking, and in doing so, I'm inspired by those doctors, nurses, construction workers, customs officials, flight attendants, sanitation workers, every civil compatriot, political leaders, and every international friend who have been actively playing their parts in the fight against novel coronavirus. Only in solidarity, we human society will have a chance to win over the COVID-19 with pride and dignity. Now, which path do you take?
Thank you, Jia Yi. It's true that in times of crisis, what are normally straightforward decisions can be extremely difficult ones. That's when we really face tests of character. That brings us to our final speaker today, Xiong Ziqing in Monterey, about 200 kilometers south of San Francisco. Ziqing sees the pandemic a special way, which all has to do with independence, codependence, and so on. Let's hear his story.
Thank you, Chen Xue. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings from sunny California, and not such a sunny hour. This is my third appearance at Vision China. This great event has given me the opportunity to see China and the world from different perspectives. The first time I was here, like you, I was in the audience. The second time I acted as a volunteer, and this time I've been given the great honor of being a speaker. 2 years ago, from the stage of the China Daily 21st Century Cup English speaking competition in Hangzhou, I was fortunate enough to win a place in the finals of international public speaking competition in London. With that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, I took the proposition, great artists have no country, and made a much more far-reaching claim, that every individual will have no country. With high-speed travel, both on land and in the air, the boundaries between cities and between countries have slowly vanished. Travel and globalization have drawn us closer together. And in this community of a shared future, we can now truly say that our strongest ties are as much with the world as they are with any single country. 2 years after I made that speech, the gradual change I talked of has been replaced by upheaval. Amid the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, trains have been stopped, aircraft grounded, borders closed, and the doors of schools and colleges shut. In the area where I live, the past month has been full of contradictions. Classmates who used to sit inches from one another now see each other face-to-face via video. In the virtual classroom, stage fright has given way to camera fright. With fewer people, queues at banks and supermarkets are longer than ever because of social distancing. And goods you could once easily find in the supermarket have suddenly become scarce. We're all trying very hard to remain positive, which is difficult to do when you are confronted with something as insidious and horrible as COVID-19. Like many other Chinese students here in Monterey, I chose to stay here, or as it's called locally, shelter in place. As the semester continued, and any dim chance of getting a flight back to China became dimmer still. For me, at first glance, COVID-19 seemed less like a wake-up call than a nasty slap across the face. A virus posing systemic threat to the world and showing how powerless we seem to be as individual global citizens. Yes, less travel and efficient social distancing seem to be bringing this pandemic under control. But they also seem to be tearing this world apart. Some critics have even warned that COVID-19 spells the end of globalization. So, are distancing and separation really doing what they are supposed to do? Without doubt, distancing is helping prevent the virus from spreading. But if we look at the data, it seems that distancing is a very incomplete solution. The United States was among the first countries to block entry to people who had been to China and make the concept of social distancing known to the world. And yet, the US has become the country with the most confirmed cases, active cases, and deaths. So, as more cities and countries across the globe lock down, as the city of Wuhan did nearly 3 months ago, it is clear that distancing is not enough. Closing borders, banning travel, and social distancing may do well in mitigating the spread of the virus, but they cannot be regarded as a magic potion that rids the world of this scourge once and for all. China has made great strides in bringing the coronavirus under control, but it has done far more than simply imposing lockdowns. Border controls have become a lot tighter, and the imposition of social distancing has become tougher. But the world needs to take heed of other measures and other approaches China has taken as well. As a Chinese exchange student in the US, I see China's stance has been one of reaching out rather than distancing. When more than 500,000 Chinese nationals could not get home, home came to us in the form of health packs prepared for students in the US and dispatched by China's embassies and consulates. Reports and advice on personal health have also been issued daily, including lectures on disease prevention, live streamed at times to suit those in any of the US's 7 time zones. So much thought seems to have been put into this outreach that it will be virtually impossible for any Chinese student here to feel that they are isolated, far from home. In fact, in some ways over the past few weeks, home has never seemed any nearer. This period of distancing has convinced me that in facing the challenge of a global epidemic, distancing alone can never be enough. For me, one of the main benefits of distancing is that it reminds us of the value of sharing, caring, and communicating with others. Distancing is first and foremost a way of taking care of ourselves, taking care, and treating those we love in a responsible way. By doing so, we fulfill one of our most important duties, to ensure that humanity not only survives, but also thrives. More importantly, gathering or reuniting at a distance shows who and what we really love and care about. Like many other events, the international public speaking competition was cancelled at the COVID-19 outbreak, and it remains uncertain whether our international friends will appear in the upcoming 21st Century Cup. But a pandemic cannot sweep away friendships, goodwill, and exchanges of ideas and knowledge. Former participants in the speaking competition, no matter where they are in the world, have got into the habit of staying closely in touch through social media. And global interdependence is therefore maintained in a new way. Video conference apps are no longer just platforms of e-learning, but have been turned into bridges that connect us all. Behind the popularity of social media and the apps that go with them is our instinct to sympathize, communicate, and work together regardless of time and distance. About 260 years ago, the Scottish economist Adam Smith wrote these words: "How selfish soever man may be supposed, there are evidently more principles in his nature, which interest him in the fortune of others. Of this kind is pity or compassion, the emotion which we feel for the misery of others, when we either see it or are made to conceive it in a very lively manner." In that spirit, when we look at the latest COVID-19 statistics, we ought not just see figures, but also be conscious of the human lives that lie behind them, the suffering of those people have endured, and that most of us have happily spared. as I see social distancing drawing us closer together. Other speakers today have also touched on issues of caring, sharing, and communication in a troubled world. As we fulfill our responsibility to take care of ourselves and of those we care about, let us also be aware of our deep reliance in one another as together we build a community of shared peace and love. And once COVID-19 is conquered and global connections are restored, let us heed the invaluable lessons this period has taught us and never forget that only in unity can we all prevail, win, and prosper. Thank you for your attention and stay safe.
Thank you, Ziqing. It's true that to prevent the virus from spreading, borders have had to be closed and towns and cities locked down. And we must continue to maintain safe social distances. But of course, division is not the answer to this crisis. As Ziqing has said, the more the virus drives us apart, the more we need to stick together to defeat it. And that's all the speakers for today. 1 week ago, the lockdown in Wuhan was lifted, marking an initial victory in China's fight against COVID-19. But we haven't stopped there. In fact, China has provided and is providing medical supplies, including surgical masks, protective suits, and test kits to 127 countries and 4 international organizations to help them defeat our common enemy. This joint fight has already taught us many things. One of the most important being that things like COVID-19 have the power to draw us together, but also the power to pull us apart. We must choose which of those forces will prevail. And going by the stories we have heard today, young people everywhere are choosing the road of togetherness. They are working to build a community with the shared future for humankind. They're acting to feed the world with fresh ideas and healthy values, even as they fight against stereotypes and discrimination. They are not lofty individuals with decades of experience and learning they can show off, but they do come armed with wonderful aspirations that allow us to say they truly represent the future. And that brings us to the end of today's Vision China. We'd like to thank our speakers whose youthful wisdom gives us great cause for hope in the brighter days to come. We would also like to thank our partners, Xi'an Jiaotong Liverpool University and Canadian International School of Beijing. And of course, we'd like to thank everyone who has watched this edition of Vision China online. For the latest on China's fight against COVID-19, you can visit www.chinadaily.com.cn. Download the China Daily app or follow China Daily on WeChat, Weibo, Facebook, or Twitter. For more young voices, please visit www.i21st.cn and follow the 21st Century Cup English-speaking competition on WeChat and Weibo. And please stay tuned for upcoming Vision China events, where we'll talk about important issues for China and the world. Thank you and goodbye.